Sorry about that, guys. Had a bit of a technical difficulty there.
Yeah, we'll give it just a couple minutes here. Not really sure what happened. Just chalk up one more thing to 2020 of screwing stuff up.
For sure.
I don't know what we're going to do in 21 when we've used up the scapegoat of 2020. So we'll give folks just a couple more minutes here to get back logged in. Hopefully we get our numbers back up. We had a really good crowd there tuning in and watching. So
absolutely.
We'll get started.
That's part of the price of doing business with everything going to virtual.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nathan and I were talking there before we got started. It seems like every one of these we've done something finicky or a little bit strange has happened. So I guess we should have just banked on it.
Yeah. Yeah. This can often not be great for my anxiety, to be really honest with you. But it always works out. It always we always get through it, and we always make the best of it. So we've got about 50 people tuned back in and watching. So we'll go ahead and get started here again. So we'll start with Man Up. We didn't get any further than just describing it until we recognized what was going on. So again, Man Up's a 14.5% protein, 7% fat, and 2% fiber product that contains ractopamine. So Nick, go ahead.
For sure. Hey, one other thing that I wanted to throw out here real quick. If you have any technical difficulties on your end, because we obviously have seen some, all this stuff is being recorded too.
Yes.
And so
Yep.
A really neat thing that we're getting to do here with our customers and talking with you guys that is also being recorded. So as we're talking here about Man Up, we feel like this is something that in the cattle feeding realm that you can get as much quick change as any product that we've ever used. And so I think the biggest thing is we're talking about, the big steer show here at the Cattlemen's Congress. There's a great replacement show there, the Patriot in Abilene, that would be kind of for those Fort Worth steers. And then the remainder of the Texas majors are going to go on without a hitch, and we're pumped up for that. And so for these steer guys, and this one would be directed more just towards steers, but it's something that I think as you're trying to get just more mass everywhere, that this is a standout product. And so it has some of those same properties of ractopamine that you would see from Sunglo cattle explosion that we'll talk about here in a second, but with those added just highly efficient and soluble fats that really work well in livestock feeding. And so as you're adding just kind of a shaped up muscular look, it's also laying down a hard fat that gets you in combination the right kind of overall dimension as you're studying one from up above from that rear view that we need to see. And so like some other things we've seen at times with feeding ractopamine, maybe you had to have them a little bit fatter before you put them on this. This is something that you don't maybe have to have them just completely cooked and finished before you go to. And so again, as you get into these final 30 days, and this is something we recommend for the final 45, but you'll see a big change in the final 30 if that's all the longer you can do it. And so you just go ahead and start feeding this. And I know we had a question earlier. I'm sorry, I kind of bounce around when I talk, but we had a question earlier about, can we get this so that they want to eat it? And so the answer that I would give you is no, but let me tell you why you actually should like that. So the fats that are in there that make it so impressive and does all those great things of laying down just kind of that powerful look actually is what makes it to some cattle maybe not their favorite thing to eat. And so if we made it so that every one of them liked to eat it, it wouldn't work as good. And so kind of like anything in life, you got to take some to win some. And so this is something that then we also give, those instructions of how to drench them. And obviously that can come with maybe some frustrations at times, but that's definitely the best way to do it if you really want some big time results. And I think that's what we all want. And so to simply put it, whenever you're making up a drench, because we've had a lot of good questions about that, add enough water that it makes it so you can pull it up in a drench gun. And obviously there's different amounts, and people have told me, we use it with this amount of water, we use this amount of water. I tell everybody, just add a nice amount of water that makes it so you can draw it up in a drench gun, and that'll work. You can never put too much water in it. So again, a product that we've seen a lot of guys switch to and use pretty heavily, even if you have one that you think is pretty on target everywhere, but maybe a judge that you're showing to just likes them absolutely ripped up and powered up. This is something that we've seen guys, even with steers that maybe are adequate muscled, go to just to get them, out there looking and powerful. And a lot of these cattle can handle that these days with as good built as they are. So definitely something that we're excited to have in our lineup.
Yeah, and so I guess what would you say? What would make a better candidate in your eyes for Man Up than would make a candidate for Show Cattle Explosion or vice versa?
For sure. Yeah, like I touched on there earlier, and I probably didn't describe it just perfectly, but if you have a steer that you think just needs more power everywhere, I think is the first candidate that I would tell you, just because it gives you a lot all at once. The other candidate I would tell you is if you have one that you'd like to power up, but maybe they're not just absolutely on target in terms of finish and they're a little greener in terms of the way they handle. I think that's the other candidate that definitely stands out in my mind for this feed or for this supplement, excuse me.
Yeah, and now that we're on what kind of cattle have worked well, let's pull up a couple examples here of cattle that have performed well with Man Up.
For sure, yeah. So the steer on the left, this red steer, which is one of my favorite ones since I've lived in Oklahoma, that's one at Tulsa, would have been shown by Cade Rendiger, and a steer that I thought in terms of his basic build and design and just overall look from the side profile was absolutely impressive. And I would say he probably even had enough muscle by all standards. But I know that they were looking for just a little bit more for who was judging that day to get just a shade more power out of him. And his build could absolutely handle it. That's a steer that I think certainly worked good with Man Up there, and a calf that, again, just kind of it all came together right. He could handle the added just power, even though he probably didn't necessarily need it, just to make him that much more impressive. And then the steer on the right, so that would be a calf there shown by the Hale family out there in West Texas. And actually, that was one of the very first steers that used Man Up that got along at a Texas major. That was the first spring that it was out. I think actually one of the very first buckets we made, I directly shipped to Bradley, and he fed that to that steer. And a calf that, again, I thought was pretty on target in terms of everything, maybe not quite as fat as what you'd want one before you would maybe put him on a Sunglo Cattle Explosion. And so they went ahead and used Man Up. And again, we're absolutely floored just with the changes that it made. And the rapid pace that it made. And honestly, I would tell you, just because we're not keeping anything hidden, he got to a point where he thought he was where he needed to be, and he backed off of it. He didn't even feed it all the way through. And so there's different ways that you can go about this. And some guys do like to get to that point that they're very comfortable before, trying to skid in at the last minute on show day. They start a little bit sooner with this and then maybe back them back off of it. So there's plenty of different ways to go about this, but yeah, a steer on the left that I thought certainly with his basic build and design could handle it, and a steer on the right that sentimental for this feed that I kind of played an integral role of coming up with to be one of the first ones that got along at a major there that first spring that it was out, I think is pretty darn cool.
Yeah, definitely. We've got a good question here from Jerry. We're going to pop up for folks to see. I just joined back. How many days can they be on Man Up? Is there a time that's too long?
I would tell you that the label says, I think it's 48 days. And that's what all the stuff that we get from our end from Optiflex requires us to stay. There have been people that have probably gone longer. And I would tell you, just go ahead and follow the label. And if you feel confident in yourself to go ahead and do other things, then give us a call and we'll try to talk through those scenarios.
Yeah. And I think like any Ractopamine or Optiflex, whatever, Paline, whatever term you want to use there, you always have to use it with a little bit of discretion, right? I mean, if you've got an animal that's, structurally not just, the soundest or is too straight off both ends, you're going to just want to be careful. So it's no different than feeding any other livestock, any other Ractopamine product, pigs, obviously. So we've got to watch it in the pig side in terms of not feeding too much explode. Same thing here. You always want to be doing what's best for the livestock. That's the key in the whole deal in terms of an animal husbandry standpoint. But Man Up is a product that I'm repping tonight, because I'm a big steer guy and pretty proud of that product. I know that's one that I would dang sure wish we would have had back when my brother was showing 10, 15 years ago, because man, we could always get him pretty close. but just never could quite get them right perfect right there across the finish line. So I think that this is a product that can really change some cattle for the better. Let's pull up Shannon's question. It's going to get cut off here, but have a Mayborn steer calf. It's got great potential, but needs a little more through his rib and depth. Show is end of January. What do you recommend? Should say he is an Angus steer also.
Yeah, I would say just go ahead and get him on full body. And that's something that I think will help you not only in terms of just his rib, but then also some depth. And that's a feed that you can feed all the way through, especially if you got one that's, again, maybe just a shade younger. It's going to help just get him a shade more massive there in his body shape.
Did you say full tank or full body? You cut off there. Sorry.
Full body. Sorry.
Full body. Okay. Full body, Shannon. Yep. Yeah, great question. All right, well, let's jump on down into Show Cattle Explosion. So Show Cattle Explosion is a product that, man, how many years would you say that thing's been around, Nick? I know that's one that's well before you and I started on the Sunglo team, but one that I think has really kind of kept the test of time and really been one that's I think more and more people are kind of leaning back into. So that's a 14% protein, 7.5% fat, and 5% fiber. Again, Optiflex based or containing Optiflex product supplement here that is pelleted. So that's one of the major differences as you look at Man Up versus Show Cattle Explosion visually. They look very different. So I'll try to find. Here's the photo I've got of that product. It's just a kind of a plainer looking pellet, but man, there's a lot of power packed into those little pellets, Nick.
Absolutely. Yeah. This one's been around for as long as I can really remember, and before I started working for Sunglo, and it's always worked. And I think that's, again, why these kind of products stay around. This is, as far as I know, currently one of the only show kind of safe Optiflex options. And so if you have a calf that just needs some added shape everywhere, I think this is something that absolutely should be in your arsenal, specifically those final 30 days. And again, I'm pretty sure that the recommendation is 47 or 48 days right in there on the label. But if maybe you're a little late to the game and you're 30 days out, kind of as we're talking tonight, going through this scenario, you're going to see plenty of just a reaction and definitely the results you're looking for at that point. And I think certainly something that is exciting for us to have around, because it has stuck around so long. And so as we talked earlier, kind of what's the candidate for this kind of a feed? And so I would tell you that a lot of times it's a calf that is maybe a little bit fatter everywhere. And maybe you're just trying to shape them back up and kind of freshen them back up in terms of their top and their handle. And then the other one is, maybe he just is a bit of a flatter steer. Maybe he just needs a bit more pop to the edge of his muscle. And those would be kind of the two. And maybe they are the same calf, just kind of describing them different ways. But those would be kind of the things that I would describe in a calf that I would definitely recommend to feed a Sunglo Cattle Explosion. And that's something that, as you heard us say there earlier, maybe you're not quite as comfortable with feeding Man Up and having to drench it, which is fine. We all have kind of where we want to be and what we want to do with our livestock. I've never known one not to eat Sunglo Cattle Explosion. And so if you're more comfortable with pouring it in their feed pan, then this is something that you can do. And if you're trying to add in some other fats and other things, go ahead and do it your way. We all try to get to that end result, and we all got to do it our own way. So definitely this is something that is highly palatable for livestock. They don't mind eating it. You can add it right in there. They're not going to turn their nose up to it. And I think certainly it gets you some added dimension and just overall power that we need here in the steer ring.
Yeah, let's pull up, you mentioned Baylor earlier. Man, you talk about the bottom crew, and this is one of those products that that they're going to have in their arsenal there when they're getting steers ready for majors.
Yeah, they got enough of the buckets of that. They eat their Cheerios out of it in the morning, and they lean on it pretty heavily, but you have to. I think as we get in these steers and we're making them just so impressive everywhere, you got to stand out. And so at times you got to take a calf that is probably great everywhere and push them a little bit harder and go that extra length and get that added shape and dimension out of them. And these are two calves that I'm sure would have been plenty competitive at the bottom of the screen here without it. But whenever you push them to that extra length and you have them built that good and they're that neat from the side and their skeleton can handle it, why not try to go for greatness? And obviously the calf on the left is getting the grand slap there at the American Royal last year, and a calf that was absolutely as powerful as you could make one. When you study him from up above, just the way he's built out through his hip and down through his center stifle and lower quarter, and the way that all tied together with that kind of shape, I thought was absolutely impressive. And you heard Callis there on the mic say that it was something that just blew him away. And not saying that we're taking credit for all that, because that calf, right, I'm sure had plenty of power, but I'd say what definitely didn't hurt anything. And then the calf on the right would be one that is built awesome and probably was coming with just a shade more condition, and the way that he was bred without getting into that, maybe he didn't have as much just shape and pop to the edge of his back. And so they had him on it. And then that calf would have been third overall there at OIE. I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago. But I thought that was a good candidate to put up there, of a calf that his feet and legs were killer and he was coming with just a bit more condition. Perfect candidate for Sunglo Cattle Explosion, because he just needed a bit more shape right there out of the backside of his shoulder, down in through his center stifle and lower quarter. And then by feeding this, I think they definitely got it.
Yeah. And not that we want to get too deep in the weeds on talking about different maturities and kind of what that means and how people read them. But I mean, generally speaking, would you say that cattle that are maybe just a notch faster maturing, a little easier fleshing, are probably going to respond better to explosion, as opposed to cattle that are maybe just a shot greener and maybe aren't quite as quick in terms of their overall makeup, are going to respond maybe better to man up?
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. I would explain it the exact same way, especially like you said, and you see it on the hog side of things too. But there's people that are feeding a lot older livestock, and that's part of the game. We can cuss and discuss it and say that it's not right, but at the end of the day, success comes in different ways. And so if you have one that is a little bit older, that maybe you had to kick out for a while and he's always just been a little bit chubby, but you got to get his muscle back right, then I think absolutely you go ahead and feed Sunglo Cattle Explosion. If you have a younger one that's maybe just a bit more immature, then yes, absolutely. I think that's the perfect candidate for man up.
Yeah. We're going to pull. Jerry's got great questions here tonight, so appreciate him tuning in. So let's drop in this question for a March show. Do the results keep if you start now, or do you recommend waiting a few weeks?
What's the date today? Almost the 1st.
Yep.
I guess it would depend. If it's the middle of March, yeah, go ahead and start. I think that you should probably keep around kind of that 45, 47, 48 range, and probably don't need to go just a long shot past that, because it does definitely come with some potency, which is what we want out of it. And so I would just kind of always gauge that off of that. And so, yeah, depending on when it is in March, absolutely, you can go ahead and get started on it.
Yeah. Is this a product too that some folks kind of pulse along? They might feed it for just a little bit, pull it out for, feed it for a couple weeks, pull it out, and then maybe reboot and start over.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you could do that as far as getting kind of some of it built up in their system. And I've known guys to say, and I'm not going to tell them that they're right or wrong, but that helps you get a little bit more out of it, just as far as an efficacy there at the end. And maybe it does. But I also know some guys that will have a calf that's maybe plenty chubby, and they're going to some jackpot shows. And so they're going to feed this for a couple weeks, before maybe their target jackpot show that they go to, and then take them off it for a while. And then whenever they get geared up for, maybe a midsummer show, they want to pull them back out of the barn. They'll go ahead and put this calf on it again for a couple weeks. And then they still have enough of a push out of it there at the end whenever you put them on it for that final 45 days. But yeah, you can absolutely pulse this in them. And I think as long as you're watching it, like you said there earlier, you are playing with something that does come with some punch. And so as long as you're watching things, you can absolutely pulse this along.
Yeah.
Good questions.
These questions are great. This is what makes this so good, is the interactive part of it. We can't be sitting around doing a feed clinic, unfortunately, right now. So we got to work with what technology's given us. So Jared's got a question that I love. I cannot wait to hear Nick's answer. How comparable is full body to PreCon?
So I'm going to get called a homer here, and obviously I have Sunglo on my hat, but I believe pretty strongly in full body, and I'm not going to sit here and bash on anybody else's stuff. The reason why I love this product, it is palatable. The pellet size is a bit smaller, and so for younger livestock, I think that they are a bit more apt to eat it. And then also it's a locked diet, and so it's the same every time you get it. And for those reasons, I would tell you that I would lean towards full body. And again, I'm not going to say any bad word about any other feed. That's why I like full body. And that's how I'm going to answer that question.
Yeah. Thanks, Jared. We truly believe that if you feed them side by side, that you will love the results that you get with our products. So thanks for asking that question. That's a good one.
For sure.
So we've got we still have some time here, and I've got full tank and full body double clicked on. So if we've got some more questions, we've still got quite a few folks watching, which we really appreciate it. And again, this is all being recorded, so don't worry if you weren't able to take notes or want to come back and tune in and watch again. So if you got some more questions, I know that Nick's happy to hang out for another 5 to 10 minutes and get some of those questions answered. So I guess as folks are maybe thinking of some things to chat about or ask us, Nick, well, what would you say to some of those folks that are getting ready to head into Cattlemen's Congress here in the next few days? They're thinking about what they got to do with their own program, traveling across the country. How can they keep those cattle fresh and full and on feed the next few days?
For sure. Yeah. And this doesn't even talk so much as to just feeding livestock, but just kind of taking care of them as you're traveling. And I know my family, we always go to the National Western whenever it goes on. And that's a trip for us. Or maybe when we're going to Louisville, we'll try to find a layover spot and get those things kicked out for a minute, maybe leave a day or two early and get those things freshened back up. I don't think you want to be skidding in at the last minute because I think with how schedules go at times, it can be a quick turnaround. And so also for just the comfort of those livestock to give them things the opportunity to jump out, breathe some fresh air, get their feet on some hard dirt, and just turn into cattle for a couple of days. We'll even go to those layovers and just let them relax and not even work on them. Maybe for that first day, we don't give them a bath. We just let them stand outside and eat and drink and just fill back up. And so That's something that I think you definitely got to take into consideration. And then also, which I'm pretty detail oriented when it comes to the show, but just making sure you have things packed that maybe even if you've never had a scenario where it's played out a certain way or you hope that it doesn't happen, you got to be ready for anything. And so some of these feeds, I'll tell you, I got some standing in the barn here that I'm feeding on. Not every one of them is getting each and every one of these products, but I'll pack a few bags of each of them just in case some of the other ones that I think that they need to go on at the show. And sorry for being a little bit weird saying that, but I think that you always got to be ready for anything when you go into these shows, and traveling is hard on livestock. And so having every tool possible whenever you jump them off the trailer, I think only helps you. It's never going to hurt you.
Right. Yeah. Better be over prepared when headed to a show, because anything can happen. We've all been there. All right, we got a lot of great questions coming up here, so we'll pull them up into the screen. Austin's question was first here: could you combine any implants with Man Up / Explosion for the final push from March show?
Yes, you can. I would say that calf is going to have to be pretty behind and pretty narrow. You're going to get a lot of results out of it. And if you never fed either Man Up or Explosion, I would tell you to feed it first on a calf before you decide to add something in extra. That's as punchy and just goes that extra mile like an implant does. And if you feel like you still can go a step further, you go ahead and do your thing. I don't think it's necessary, but you can.
Again, depends on the calf, right? Depends on
sure.
Genetic. I mean, there's some. I hate saying that as a cop-out answer, but man, they're all different.
Yeah.
All right, Matt's got a kind of a question that we touched on a little bit there, and it's going to get cut off. It only pulls up so much, but basically, do you get results in building on cattle early, then taking them off and then back on? Just kind of that same pulsing question that we had earlier.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can pulse them. I would say different from hogs is it seems like you can make those changes a little bit faster and come up and down the roller coaster a little bit quicker. And so it's not exactly the same, but yeah, same principles for sure.
Yeah. All right, and then Phil's got a question here. Would Man Up work in a pellet or just too much fat to do so?
Yeah, the properties of those fats in there, it would be pretty hard to make in a pellet. And so that's why it is there in a granular form. And again, why we put in there that a drenching option is always something that you can go to. And so that's the way that it needs to be for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, pelleting is a high heat process, and which it would not, unfortunately, it just would not react well to what's in Man Up. So good question, though, Phil. Jerry's got one. If your steer maybe close to weight gain, would you have to be cautious with full body and other high fiber supplements? So I'm assuming if you're close to your in weight.
Yeah, not necessarily. I think that's actually where they could really come into effect and really be a positive result for you, especially like a full tank. If you're pretty close on what you think your max weight needs to be, or if you have a steer that just completely got away from you and like your county show has a max weight, then I think that's where full tank really comes into play, because you can basically swap out a good chunk of their diet for a full tank, and they're essentially not going to gain any weight, but they're going to stay full. And so that's actually a scenario where this feed definitely stands out as a positive for you. Great question.
Yeah. Jerry, I'm so glad you tuned in, man. You've had lots of great questions for us here tonight. Okay, Lisa's got a question. We are feeding a nursing heifer. Is full body and full tank good for her? Are full body and full tank good for her? She is being shown at jackpots. Calf is 3.5 months old.
Yeah, I think you're fine there, especially the full body. You're going to be plenty good to go on that. A full tank, I would kind of slowly ease her into that, just because their guts are still growing and kind of adapting to everything. Full body, you're absolutely fine. Full tank, I would just slowly ease into it, and you can absolutely feed it, but just start slow.
Yeah, and I mean, full body can be used, I mean, truly as a creep feed. I mean, that's another option for that product. So don't be afraid with full body by any stretch on a younger calf. So a point of clarity.
Read Jerry's question wrong. He's on the other end of the seesaw. In that case, no, I would not feed full tank. You could still feed some full body, because I think it does have some goodies in there that keeps your gut going. But in that scenario, if you're on the light end, I just pour a bag of feed out in their feed bunk and just hammer on them. Go ahead and get some finisher and let them eat it.
Yeah. Yeah, don't overcomplicate it. I mean, at this point, it sounds like you need calories. And if you're going to be feeding, if you're going to be pushing, you definitely need calories. There's no doubt. Thanks for clarifying there, so we could get your question answered. So we've got a few more minutes here. If you've got a couple more questions there, folks, again, don't be afraid to tune in. I will say the rest, if you're looking for the rest of our videos, this is, I don't know, about the 10th Facebook Live we've done in the past few months. They are all located on our YouTube channel, so I've dropped the link there for you to check out later on. And again, this is being recorded, so you'll be able to go back in here and watch this as soon as I hit stop tonight, and then tomorrow I'll have it posted there on with the YouTube link once it gets put on our YouTube channel. So please check out our YouTube channel. We've got dozens of videos on there about all of our products, and lots of different interactive interviews, and good Facebook Lives as well. Shannon's got a good question here. Our calf is on Sunglo show calf feed. Would we keep him on that as well and feed full body too?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. Yeah, I think that's what you need to do. And maybe we need to make it a little bit more simple whenever we're describing some of these things. But yeah, absolutely keep them on a base feed, such as a Sunglo calf feed. Obviously, that's what we're advocating for, because those extras that we put in there to keep their gut going and keep everything working at a high degree, I think are something that stands out. Especially, we didn't talk on that tonight, but in those final 30 days, I think when you're feeding a premium feed such as this is really whenever you see those things come into play and stand out in a feeding strategy, is whenever you see maybe just a bit more stress and you're maybe trying to push on them a little bit harder, or we're clipping on them and making them stand up longer, and we throw them on the bus and we start headed towards the show. Those extras really come into play, and I think that's when they stand out And then obviously whenever you're feeding full body along there with it, that's a great condom or a great combo. And I think something that certainly goes well together. Yeah. One thing too that I wanted to go ahead, and Nathan was talking about there earlier, you can go to our YouTube channel. One cool thing, because I had to look up myself some of the recommended feeding rates on some of these feeds, because a lot of times, and Nathan makes fun of me, but I feed at, a scoop of this, a half a scoop of that, and it's a little bit more when I'm standing out there with the scoop in my hand versus knowing exactly what I feed as far as weights. But I was going through there on our website, the Sunglo website, and was clicking on each and every one of these feeds. And as you scroll to the bottom and you're reading through these things, there's a video for each and every one of these. And those are kind of the videos that we think best describe each and every one of these feeds. Or maybe it's a sit down with a breeder that thinks that this feed is a key to their success. And so I think certainly as you're looking at those feeds on the website and reading about them, and you can scroll to the bottom and then get one of those videos that we think highlights all the things that these things do exceptionally well.
Yeah. Chad's got a good question here. With a flat-sided calf, especially in his forerib, how hard can you push full body?
As hard as you want. I would say that forerib a lot of times also is partially fat cover. And so you're going to look at this a couple different ways. So if it's a steer, I would actually also start feeding man up, because the added fats in there are going to help you with some fat cover up there in their forerib. With full body, then along with it, if he's flat ribbed, you're going to start to get some outward curvature to their center body. And so without getting way off in the weeds, if you can get some outward curvature to their center body and get them hairy enough, you can cover up that forerib. Would be how I would describe that. But also, I think some man up along with it with those added fats in there are going to help you lay some fat cover in those areas.
Yeah, especially if you're needing that the last 30 to 45 days.
No doubt.
Yeah, Jerry's wanting to know how he can get a hold of you, Nick.
Nathan, you can give him your phone number. No, on our website, all of our numbers are on there, and feel free to call at any time. Everybody on this call tonight, I think, has had great questions, and it's fun for us to just talk through feeding scenarios, because that's what we do for our job. And then even when we're not doing our job, that's what we're doing with our own livestock. Yeah. And so go ahead and call us at any time. I'm sure we'll be thinking about feed regardless of whether we're wearing a Sunglo hat or doing our own thing. Yeah. But all of our phone numbers are there on the website.
Yeah, and I just dropped the link there into the chat there on our website with our team and all the different contact infos there. So Trent wants to know, how far away from your show should you start to feed man up?
Yeah, I think we said there earlier, what did we decide it was, 48 days?
Yeah, 48 days is what the label recommends. So we're going to have to tell you legally that, 48 days would be the furthest out that you can start to feed that product. But really, this is one that you're probably going to see, just listening to Nick and hearing from other folks. I mean, you're going to start to see results within, 3 or 4 weeks. So don't be afraid even if you think that you're behind the 8 ball in terms of how far out you're wanting to start. I mean, even if you've only got 3 or 4 weeks left, don't be afraid to start.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say, because I get that call, hey, we're 2 weeks out. And we know that we're way too close to the show to start feeding man up. So what else do you have? And I just tell them, go get a bucket of man up and feed it for 2 weeks. That's the most potent feed supplement that we have. And so if you only have 2 weeks, you only have 2 weeks to be on it. But it's better than not being on it. And so I think that it's still a great option, even if you are, kind of to that oh crap moment, you can still go get a bucket of this and get some good out of it.
Yeah. This has been great. We appreciate all the questions. I kind of stuck in our last call for questions, so we'll stay on just a couple more minutes. We're past our hour that we normally stay on here. Again, make sure you check out our YouTube channel. There is tons of information. That's one of our main goals at Sunglo is to be a feed company that is educational. Because if you can't learn, there's no reason to be doing this. Nobody knows everything. I mean, every time I get on one of these calls, and I'm sure Nick feels the same way. I mean, every time we talk with each other and chat with folks in the industry and the rest of our team, that's how we get better. That's how we learn. And so there's no secrets here. we want you to have as much success as you possibly can, whether that success means going from 5th to 3rd at your county fair or from trying to win a major. I mean, we can make that happen. So we appreciate everybody tuning in. Check out all the resources we've got. All the links there up in the chats. And yeah, Jerry, thank you. Appreciate you tuning in there. We wish everybody best of luck as they head out to Oklahoma City, and as you're feeding here the last few days for that, best of luck and safe travels to you and your family, and everybody stay safe and stay healthy. We appreciate everybody checking us out here tonight. Sorry, it broke up there about a half hour ago, had a little technical issue, so it's probably going to be 2 links from 2 separate, so part 1 and kind of part 2, which is fine because actually it broke up
nice.
Yeah, really, they couldn't have broke any better. So, I thank you guys again so much for checking us out. Let us know how we can help. Again, we'd love to earn your business. That's what we're trying to do here. And we'd love to be the go-to resource for you guys to get success out of your show feed. So thank you all so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. On behalf of Nick Fitzsimmons, this is Nathan Day, and thank you all so much for checking us out.
Thank y'all.